Welcome to Dodgers Daily. Casey Porter here. So glad that you decided to tune in. Fans, we have a very special guest today. We have the play-by-play voice for the AAA Oklahoma City Dodgers, Alex Freedman. I have seen his work process. This dude, nobody puts in more time for preparation for games than this guy that you're seeing on the screen right here. So, Alex, I am so glad you decided to come in and very honored.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate those kind words. Thank you.
Okay, man, I know this is the time of year where, I've seen the process up close. You think about the players and the managers. You forget, man, the game day people, the play-by-play guys. This is an everyday grind for everybody. So getting some R&R, maybe some time away from the game a little bit?
A little bit. Back a couple weeks ago, I was able to take a little time off. But as you said, there really is not a true off season in baseball. Just look at this past week or so when we had the 40-man protection deadline, we had the non-tender deadline, guys being picked up, whether it's on big league deals, minor league deals, getting an email from Los Angeles Dodgers publications asking for pictures of Vanasco, who they just re-signed to a major league deal. Great for him. So it's things like that, really, that we within the business and within the organization are always paying attention to.
So talk about this AAA team this last year. Obviously won the PCL, made it all the way to the championship game, got beat in the championship game in Las Vegas by Jackson Holliday. I know you had mentioned several different times that had a local flavor to it because he was from Stillwater, Oklahoma. We're very familiar with him and Matt Holliday, the whole Holliday family as well. So, hey, it was an awesome team to watch. A lot of great athletes, a lot of just great human beings. I've had a chance to talk to a couple of them. Luke Williams going all the way back. I know he ended up, going other places. And then guys like Yanni Hernandez was on that team, Bryson Brigman, just great dudes and great athletes. It was a lot of fun to watch, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I just want to emphasize that, the team did win the PCL championship, which honestly is more important than that one-game AAA national championship. It would have been great to win. Everyone wanted to win it. But at the end of the day, it's one game. It's basically an exhibition. It was a great event. First time I've ever been there. First time the team's ever been in it. I think the folks in Las Vegas, Major League Baseball, did a great job with it. But at the same time, winning your league is by far the most important thing. So that was something Oklahoma City had not done since 1996. Most wins in a regular season since the 1960s for an Oklahoma City team. You get maybe one or two teams across the entire minor leagues every year that win 90 regular season games. And it was the two teams that met in the AAA National Championship between OKC and Norfolk that did that. By the way, you mentioned Jackson Holliday. So Matt was there at the game, and the MLB Network broadcast booth was next to me at Las Vegas Ballpark, and they had Matt in at one point. I'll tell you what, Matt Holliday looks like he can still play. That's for sure. But, you hit on guys that, necessarily aren't the huge prospects, but in order to have a successful team, you have to have those players, the Luke Williams, the Yanni Hernandez, the Bryson Brigmans, the unsung heroes of the team. On the pitching side, even though he got traded, the Justin Hagenmans.
Yes.
Those are guys that are contributors and can fill a variety of roles, which I think all four of those guys, which you just mentioned, filled several different roles throughout the season. And again, you have to have those kind of guys to have a 90-win regular season.
So the AAA roster, Oklahoma City was Texas forever. You mentioned the 96 team. I remember that like it was yesterday. The Juan Gon team and Rusty Greer in that crew. And we actually have a young man in the system now, Jack Dreyer, who's a left-handed reliever with Great Lakes, whose dad was on that team, Steve Dreyer, that Oklahoma City team. So that's a really cool link, too. Okay, so, Oklahoma City was the Rangers forever. Of course, when I was a kid, they were the Phillies. I got to meet Tug McGraw, Bake McBride, Pete Rose, and all those guys, Steve Carlton. And then I believe we went straight from the Phillies to the Rangers. And then from the Rangers, whenever Nolan Ryan moved everything to Texas, we became the Astros for a while. Yes, we did. That was a good time. And then we became the Dodgers. So it just seems like to me, just kind of outside looking in, as soon as the Dodgers took over, the roster construction changed for the AAA level. The roster seemed to kind of get a little bit older. It's kind of an interesting dynamic between the older veteran guys and the younger prospects.
Yeah, and I think even in my time in Oklahoma City, which began in 2012, so my first three seasons were with Houston, that first year, 2012, it was an incredibly older roster. Different situation. That was when the Astros were at their lowest, at the major league level. And they just basically had a bunch of guys. They didn't have much of a farm system. And that 2012 team just had a lot of older guys that were, I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but interchangeable parts, for what they were doing at the big league level, which they knew they weren't ready to compete. They knew they weren't close to competing. But older guys that they knew that could perform at the major league level. They might not be superstars, but they could do so. And if you need to make a change, you make a change. So, yeah, that was definitely a baptism by fire in a sense to being at the AAA level for the first time, in my career. But, yeah, I'd say those first couple years, definitely 2015, first year with the Dodgers, which, again, coincides with the first year of the current baseball operations staff. So, yeah. There's going to be turnover in that sense. You new baseball operations staff, all over from Andrew Freedman to the scouting director, Billy Gasparino, to new farm director that year, which was Gabe Kapler, who, of course, has gone on to manage a couple of big league teams. So there were a lot of, again, that definitely was an older team back in 2015, and that was the best team of the Bricktown era until this year. But as, you get more into, you have your own guys that in place that you draft and you sign and you develop, that it does shift younger. And I think I can't say it for sure from a numbers perspective, because it would just take a lot of work to crunch the numbers, but it certainly felt like this was the youngest position player core that the team had in quite some time, between Michael Busch for Miguel Vargas for half the season. I mean, we talked about Yanni Hernandez. Guy was 24 still. I mean, he'd been around a while, but he was still a young guy. And, Ryan Ward, Drew Avens, guys like that, guys who hadn't necessarily been in the big leagues. And I think we've seen that a little bit kind of across baseball in general now, especially that you've had to reduce the amount of players that you have in your farm system, that the veteran class, in a sense, has gotten a little bit squeezed out. But definitely there were still some veterans on that team. We saw both AAA level and the major league level. But, yeah, it definitely did feel from a position player perspective, bit of a younger course, especially comparing it with 2022, when a lot of that year, two of the mainstays in the lineup were Jake Lamb, a lot of big league experience, Kevin Pillar as well this year, spent the entire year with the Atlanta Braves. So definitely was a change, it felt like, this season.
Then you had Matt Davidson the year before that. I still swear to God that Matt Davidson hits the ball harder than any human being I've ever seen with my own eyes. It was unbelievable, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's just the definition of a professional hitter, for sure.
Okay, so the three guys that just got protected on the 40-man, put on the 40-man roster, I know that you are very high on Hunter Fiducia. I've heard you talk about him. He's a guy that, hey, you got to watch him every day, and the more that you watch him, you just grow respect for his durability, his toughness, the respect that his teammates have for him. And then Landon Knack, you got to see him, a little less than probably a half the season. Then he got injured at the end of last year, and then Nick Frasso came up. So talk about Hunter Fiducia first, and then Landon Knack, who you got to see quite a bit more, and then Landon Knack and Nick Frasso that you got to see towards the end of last year.
Yeah, Hunter's a great story. It's he's kind of a taller and more slender catcher, and asking him how he first started catching, he said when he first started seriously playing baseball as a kid, he was, shorter and overweight. And so they just kind of stuck him behind the plate, and, hits his growth spurt eventually, goes to junior college, then goes into a big spotlight, honestly, bigger spotlight than he's had in his professional career. When you're a starter at LSU, it's serious business, and didn't perform all that great numbers-wise, but was good enough for the Dodgers to draft him, I believe, in the 12th round. Mm-hmm. And has just gotten better and better every year, not only from the offensive side of things, but also from, his leadership, the way he calls the game. He is about as even keel as it gets. You don't see him rattle anything. Some might say low energy could be a detriment. You do see some catchers that are the very exact opposite of him, that are always pumping their pitchers up. But for Hunter, if a guy's absolutely shutting or is really struggling, it's the same.
Yeah. Got that Cajun chill to him, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know he and Travis have a very special relationship, and Travis is, his background is in catching, and, it's just great for him to see him get on the 40-man roster. This year, the way the Dodgers were at, they had 3 catchers on the 40-man roster, but one was Diego Cartaya, who just got into AA. And, the catching position, you're always one foul ball away from having a complete domino effect through the entire organization, from the big leagues all the way down. And, there was one point where it was early in the season where there was an injury, and they signed Austin Wynns kind of out of nowhere, just knowing that it would be temporary. But I think this is now, that you're more confident you have an in-house option, should anything happen at the big league level. And then he's gained the respect of a lot of different players, a lot of pitchers in the big leagues. Now he's been there, big league spring training for a few years now. So
you mentioned a story about, I believe it's Clayton Kershaw.
Yeah, and it was something that Travis first told me back early in the season, where because of the World Baseball Classic, both Will Smith and Austin Barnes were playing in the World Baseball Classic, and Clayton Kershaw was, and I used the term very intentionally in the tweet in a game setting, because I can't remember if it was a Cactus League game or a backfields game, live BP, but regardless, lineup was posted. Kershaw knew he was pitching, saw there was a different catcher in there, told the coaching staff, no, I want Hunter Fiducia catching me. And when Clayton Kershaw says something like that, especially in spring training, it's going to happen. So that kind of tells you what you need to know about the way that Hunter Fiducia is certainly perceived amongst his teammates and guys who are, at the top of their game. In terms of the other guys you talked about, Landon Knack and Nick Frasso, Knack spent more time with us this year. The results were inconsistent. I know he was battling some minor injuries and eventually got shut down with a few weeks left. And that would kind of cause some fluctuations in fastball velocity from game to game. But, he battled through it. And I think, with Landon, he's not necessarily going to blow you away with anything.
Right.
But has 4 solid pitches and knows how to use them. And in this day and age, where it's funny, you heard, a few, maybe I think right after the Dodgers were eliminated from the postseason, Andrew Freedman, their president of baseball operations, saying, I don't know how many guys there are really realistically starters that can go 6-7 innings, every 5 days. We'd love to have a full rotation of them, but I don't know how realistic it is. Well, Landon Knack is one of those guys. He was the only Oklahoma City pitcher to throw 7 innings in a game this year, which
really?
As recently as 5 years ago would sound preposterous.
Wow.
I still think it does sound preposterous.
That does. That blows me away.
Situation, given how guys are now instructed to kind of favor velocity, go a bit more max effort, and not to mention that there are a lot of restrictions in place for players to protect their long-term health. So, yeah, he was the only pitcher all year to complete only starting pitcher of Oklahoma City to complete 7 innings, and he went 6 a few times as well. And then Nick Frasso, he comes up in late August in the 3-week funk for Oklahoma City's team that they just could not seem to get out of. On his AAA debut, he throws 6 scoreless innings, and it kind of just got everything back on track after that. And I think, ended up being a few starts for him before, again, he, succumbed to some minor injuries, but nothing to be concerned about. But the Dodgers just didn't want to push it. Mm-hmm. He didn't pitch for the final couple of weeks, didn't pitch in the playoffs either, neither did Landon Knack. For Frasso, the big thing with him is extension. He's kind of all arms, all knees and elbows, taller, lankier guy.
Crossfire's a touch.
Yeah, and the fastball plays up as a result. He didn't quite have the strikeout numbers that he did at AA and at his time at AAA, but again, smaller sample size. But he definitely threw the ability to throw strikes and make guys put the ball in play. So he definitely a pretty high ceiling there. No-brainer addition to the 40-man roster. And as the Dodgers have done, they tend to be very deft at these type of trades where they are willing to part with an organizational piece that might contribute at the big league level and had in the case of Mitch White when he was traded to Toronto in exchange for someone that they feel that eventually could have that really high ceiling in Nick Frasso. And a lot of people point out this could end up being a very beneficial trade for the Dodgers in the long run.
Were you surprised with Ricky Vanasco? I've been telling people how motivated this young man has been. I've seen his process both at Tulsa and then in Oklahoma City. I've had a chance to communicate with him a couple of times. Got DFA'd by Texas last year. And instead of just, like these professionals do, you got to pick yourself back up the next day. You can't feel sorry for yourself. Nobody else is going to feel sorry for you, so you can't feel sorry for yourself. So you got to pick yourself up and use it as fuel to your fire. This young man was super laser focused, and he was just tremendous down the stretch. I've been telling everybody who would listen, hey, this Ricky Vanasco guy, even before he became a free agent and got re-signed, this guy's going to be in the major leagues next year, and he's going to be good.
Yeah, I think the potential is definitely there. And, the potential, from what I understand, for Ricky's always been there. Kind of a later round high school draft pick that kind of flew under the radar by the Rangers. And when he needed to be first added to the 40-man roster, they didn't hesitate. It's just been unfortunate. He had a lot of injuries, since then. Really was kind of unable to gain his footing. Like you mentioned, this year is a AA with Texas. Late May gets designated for assignment because it was his second year on the 40-man roster. And, the Rangers haven't seen a ton of progress, and you can't necessarily fault them for making that move. But the Dodgers, as they tend to do, were able to find something they liked. And, first goes to Arizona, their facility, to start to work on things, comes into a relief role. His problem a lot of time before had been the inability to throw strikes, and that was not an issue whatsoever in his time with Tulsa or Oklahoma City. Came to OKC with a few weeks left in the regular season, and immediately gets thrown into a high leverage role and flourished.
Yeah,
he was unbelievable. Fastball, curveball, kind of primarily really works kind of north south with that. And, it's a shame because when the team was traveling from Oklahoma City to Las Vegas for the AAA National Championship game, falls asleep on the plane, but kind of, I guess, fell asleep in an awkward position. And his neck was all sorts of kinked up and just couldn't get it right for the game and wasn't available for that game, and which had to be a bullpen game for OKC. And, I know earlier I said that at the end of the day, the more important thing was winning the league championship, but that's definitely a what if. It definitely could have changed the team's pitching plans that day had he been healthy, because he became the setup guy, and early on, right down the stretch and into the playoffs. There were more established guys who had been with the team, but he had shown that ability. And, the Dodgers I was a little, I don't know if surprise is the right word, but they could have just re-added him to the 40-man roster.
That's kind of what I was saying. Yeah.
And I don't know why that didn't happen, but as I've said, I'm sure there's some behind-the-scenes plausible reason that we just don't know about. Or, hey, maybe Ricky and his agent wanted to maybe see what could potentially be out there. I don't know. But it's not surprising to me. Ultimately, I felt that once he reached free agency based on what he should, he was going to sign a major league deal somewhere, especially because he had one option year remaining. I've heard just because of all the time he missed, there's potential for 2, but that could be down the road. But for sure, one option year remaining. So I was pretty confident he was going to get a big league deal somewhere. Unfortunately, it's back with the Dodgers. So good for him and good for the Dodgers.
So it was an up and down year for Gavin Stone. Obviously he rode the high of being the minor league pitcher of the year in 2022. Finally reached the crescendo, made it to L.A., and things just went sideways on him. I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat that, and I don't think that sounds negative. I think that's just the truth. And so then, you have to really get back to the drawing board, and he gets back down in AAA Oklahoma City. You got to see that entire grind and really just kind of reinvented himself as the season went on. So what were your thoughts on Gavin Stone?
Yeah, and I think something you have to keep in mind, whether it's Gavin Stone or anybody else, for a lot of them, it's the first time in their entire life they have struggled at the game of baseball.
100% correct.
And, the game, a lot of, I say, whether it's baseball, whether it's another sport or just another profession, when someone is doing something that looks easy, it's because they make it look easy. Yes. Not because it is easy, it's because they make it look easy. And that's just kind of my general preface to talk about, Gavin here. And like you said, there was mixed results at the beginning, gets up to the big leagues, and then was riding the shuttle for most of the year. And I don't think anyone really realizes how hard that is when you don't know where you're going to pitch.
The Mitch White plan.
5-6 days for sure. There were plenty of times where he was just scratched from a start in Oklahoma City because he might be needed and wasn't, and then would end up pitching 2 or 3 days later, whether it's an OKC or anything like that. That happened to him a lot this year. So especially starting pitchers who are a creature of habit. He didn't have much of a routine this year. But like you said, there were two things, talking with the pitching coaches, they felt he really needed to work on to be successful at the big league level. And one was fastball location, so it could play off his changeup could play off it better, because guys were just seeing the changeup out of the hand and basically taking it. And the other was being able to get in on left-handers, and he developed a cutter in the middle of the season because of that. And he had traditionally thrown more of a regular slider before then, but now started to work in harder cutter as well. That not only utilized left-handers but right-handers as well. But the main purpose was to be able to get in on left-handed batters. So it was a process. His first few starts with Oklahoma City, as he was trying new stuff, did not go well. But as the good ones do, they put it together. They figured it out. And I remember and Gavin, the specific turning point was right before the All-Star break, a game against Albuquerque where he was dominant. And that really just kind of shot him over the final few months, not only in Oklahoma City, but when he went back up to the big leagues to pitch extremely well. He had, remember a game at Fenway Park, that he pitched extremely. I think that was his first career win. A few other times. So yeah, a lot of credit to him. And of course, our pitching coaches, Doug Mathis, Justin Afraitis, for working with him, being patient, and being able to make those changes.
I love the word you use there, process. I tell people all the time, they go, hey, why did he walk 7 guys? Well, he's trying to add a pitch here. He's trying to add location that he's not comfortable with. He's trying to expand his game to make him, maybe the best pitcher he could be at the major league level. So I warn people, if you haven't seen guys pitch, you don't actually know what their process is at that moment, don't evaluate based off of statistics at the minor league level. Yes, now statistics do matter, and you have to produce, no doubt about it. But there are situations like Gavin Stone where I think they can be definitely explained. Okay, you had a front row seat to the unbelievable 2022 of James Outman with AAA Oklahoma City. He hit for 2 cycles. One of them was a walk-off. He had 2 grand slams. He was just an amazing player. So did anything, he finished 3rd this year in Rookie of the Year voting. Anything he did this year with LA surprise you?
I'm not sure, because I don't have the ability to watch it necessarily on an everyday basis. But I think that we saw what he's capable of. Especially early in the season, won the Rookie of the Month twice. Mm-hmm. And when there's a guy who gets hot, he's one of those guys, when he gets hot, he gets hot. Now, The flip side of that is there can be some streaks the other way as well. But, we talk about process, after that unbelievable April, really struggled in May and June, and not only credit to him, but to the Dodgers as well. They could have sent him to AAA, but they said, you know what? He needs to figure it out at the big leagues. They stuck with him, and he pulled out of it. So, the tools that we saw in Oklahoma City and throughout the minor leagues were evident. And I think that's even after Outman first got drafted in his first couple of years, which numbers-wise, like you just pointed out, at A-ball, were not great.
Yeah.
But they knew he was kind of like a ball of clay that they could mold into, and it was going to be a process with him. That the athleticism for sure was there. The work ethic was there. I heard a good podcast with his signing scout, Tom Kunis, that Baseball America did a while ago. And, he basically said, that he never wavered. James Outman never wavered, in those days in Great Lakes where things were not going well. But he stuck with it, believed in what the Dodgers were teaching him, and it all came together. So was I surprised? Like I said, I can't really give it a definitive yes or no. But if I have to lean towards one end, I'd say no, just because of some of the unbelievable things we saw him do last season.
Miguel Vargas, Michael Busch, let's put those two together. Obviously, Vargas got, the first half of the season with LA. Busch, in my opinion, was the guy that, because the Dodgers have so much talent and so much depth, hey, he was major league ready all of last year. I think we would all agree on that. But like I said, there just weren't any spots to get him consistent at bats. And I don't think people realize a lot of times your second best player needs to be in AAA instead of sitting on the bench at the major leagues, because they need everyday playing time, everyday at bats. Plus, he was creating versatility, so he got kind of caught up in that situation, but he was a tremendous professional for that. So talk about Miguel Vargas, Michael Busch, and then also a lot of fans want to know about how well they play the outfield, each one of them.
Yeah, for Vargas, I felt in 2022 he was one of the best hitters at the AAA level I'd ever seen, in my career. And the hit tool was there. And I think it was a combination, and I don't know this for sure, a combination of having to learn a new position, transitioning from third base to second base. When you're going from one side of the infield to the other, angles are completely different. And he had worked at first base or third base and a little at first basically his entire career. So learning a new position, plus, I think there were some lingering effects from injuring his hand early in spring training that just kind of threw things off. So they did stick with him for a while, and did get to the point where it was time to work on some things at AAA, and it did feel a little bit different from 2022. 2022, I say he really was just like a true 300 hitter where every 10 at bats, there was going to be 3 hits. This time it was a little bit more streaky. Now I felt there was a little bit more power, but there was also some more strikeouts, some weaker contact overall. But at the end of the day, the numbers were good, and his attitude was always really good. Mm-hmm. He was never once pouted about, being down in AAA. For Michael Busch, I mean, you nailed it. He was ready for the big leagues. That was evident very early in the AAA season. And, he did get a couple of call-ups, but there just wasn't regular playing time there. And it's not easy to go to the big leagues for the first time when you're not playing. I mean, in general, but when you're not playing every day and being able to kind of start to figure things out. So sporadic playing time certainly didn't help, but second time he got back up there, things were better than the first. But I think that the Los Angeles Dodgers have also shown that if there is a part-time role, they want to go with a guy who's more veteran, mm-hmm. and it might be a lower ceiling, but what the floor is going to be.
Correct.
As well, for the Ahmed Rosarios, the Miguel Rojas's, guys of that nature. Ultimately, I'm happy Michael Busch didn't get traded. I fully expected him to be at the deadline because, whether it was another team that can offer him regular playing time and the Dodgers could get a good piece in return, that didn't happen. But I think we're going to see Busch probably get an opportunity like Miguel Vargas did last year to get that, as the Dodgers like to say, to get that runway. In the big leagues to be an everyday player. But another plus human, no doubt MVP of the Pacific Coast League this year, and handled everything great, whether it was going up, going down. Never really struggled. All year in AAA, I really can't remember a time where he truly slumped. Just a great season, and like you said, also playing new positions, multiple positions. There had been so much work to try and turn him into a second baseman. And then this year's like, oh, by the way, we want you to try and now play third base. Yeah. In terms of the outfield, going back to Vargas, I remember last year when he first started to play left field, talking with Jason Bourgeois, who was the organization's outfield and base running coordinator, just got hired by the White Sox to their major league staff. We had a good conversation with him when he first came to work with Miguel on playing in the outfield, and said the overall ability, he had no doubt, is there, but it's just the little things like before every pitch, okay, what's the situation? What do I do if this happens, if that happens? Learning how to use afternoon work, BP time to really get locked in. So it's just the little things. He said he felt like the first step quickness was good. The instincts were good, but it was just the little things. And in his first ever game in left field, we have for those who don't know, have a huge left center field.
Sure do.
In Oklahoma City. He makes this unbelievable running catch to the deepest part of the ballpark. So that was kind of a signal that he
right in front of the bullpen.
Yeah. In Busch, again, I haven't seen him as much out there, but the athleticism is there. I mean, the guy's been asked to do so much on the defensive end that if that's what they ultimately want, he's going to go after it. And, I think his athleticism gets a bit overlooked a lot of the time. And he'll be able to do it if he'll be playable out there. Worst case scenario.
Yeah, I'm glad you used that term. I've used the term serviceable. As far as, hey, if you want to throw Michael Busch out there in left field, I think you'll have a serviceable left fielder. I do think Miguel Vargas, if he had everyday playing time in left field, could be a fantastic left fielder just from the time that we've seen them. Okay, two more guys, and we'll finish our talk on the personnel for AAA Oklahoma City. Actually, I wanted to talk Kyle Hurt too, but hey, two guys in my opinion that are extremely, extremely underrated: Ryan Ward and then Drew Avens. I love Drew Avens. He had, I believe, the 53-game hit streak in 2022, stole the 40 bases, got off to a really rough start last year. I felt like he was trying to add some home run, power to his game, but then really kind of, got things going there towards about July on. So talk about Drew Avens, one of my favorite young men in the organization, and then Ryan Ward.
Yeah, it's now 3 full years at AAA for Drew, and I know sometimes that when you come up on kind of career AAA team records, it's a dubious distinction, but it also signals you're still a really good player. So Drew's kind of getting in that situation here in Oklahoma City, but he's a guy that what you're going to get from in terms of having him at the top of the order, plus defense, plus arm in center field, willingness to do whatever it is, sacrifice himself, whether it's on the offensive or defensive end, to help the greater good of the team, and a guy that you're going to be able to put in there every single day. So, I think coming off last year, I thought he had maybe a better chance to be a 40-man roster ad or a Rule 5 guy. I'm not so sure about this year. Like you said, a little bit of a rougher start, was including, I think, trying to hit for more power early on in the season. And the numbers showed that early on, but then as the year shifted, he kind of got back to more of what he had done previously. So higher on base, putting the ball in play. But at the end of the day, it was still very productive. Like you said, a great threat on the base paths too, good speed, and probably made the most impressive and most memorable single play in the entire season. And just one of the craziest games I've ever witnessed in Reno earlier this year. Ended up being 16-15 in 11 innings, and he took away what would have been a game-tying home run in about the 11th. Yanni Hernandez having to pitch at that point. So clear home run saving catch that definitely still stands out, I feel, is maybe the single best play that we saw all year. And who was the other person that you asked?
Ryan Ward.
Ryan Ward. Well, another guy who has to do a lot of different things this year, to play first base a lot more than he had in the past. And, solid corner outfielder, big power. I don't want to necessarily put the full 3 true outcomes label on him, but there is going to be a lot of that. There's going to be strikeouts, there's going to be walks, and there's going to be home runs. And that's not as frowned upon, in this day that it was previously. I'm really looking forward to seeing him next year after spending the whole year at AAA and seeing what kind of changes he makes in the offseason and how he gets better next season.
The last guy, Kyle Hurt, he struck out everybody. I think he'd strike out his mom if he had to face his mom in a baseball game. His stuff is absolutely electric. It's always been about keeping it in the strike zone, something that he did a very good job with in 2023. So talk about Kyle Hurt.
Yeah, I think you gave a hypothetical scenario earlier about someone walking 7 guys in a game. And in his final AA start before he joined OKC, he did that. And you're thinking, is he really ready to come up to AAA? But yeah, no, he was outstanding. Yeah, definitely deserving of the organization's minor league pitcher of the year award. And like you say, the stuff is just electric there. It's just a matter of harnessing it all. And he did a better job of that, it seemed like, at AAA in his brief time in the big leagues than he did, his time at AA. And of course, there's always a lot of factors that we just don't know about. But, I asked Kyle about all the strikeouts, and he says, look, I'm just trying to get to 2 strikes as quickly as I can. And whatever happens after that happens. If it's a strikeout, great. If it's a fly out, great. I'm just trying to get 2 strikes as quickly. But I don't think there was another pitcher on Oklahoma City when he was on the way he could just simply dominate a game. We saw it a handful of times throughout his time with OKC. And when you're firing 96, 97, you've got a changeup that I think sometimes can act more like a slider. And it's weird. It kind of cuts sometimes. It's the power arm, it's power stuff. And it was definitely great to see him, that first time in the big league, 6 up, 6 down against the Padres, and a lot of great players, Machado, Tatis, Bogarts, all that. And I know it's only one time, but handled them no problem. So yeah, it's a guy who had definitely another big ceiling type of player.
You'll have a cool perspective on this. I've given my opinion several different times. On Tuesday, of course, the minor leagues went to 6-game series. So you start on Tuesday, you end on Sunday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday was the robo-ump. I mean, it was all, everything was automated. And then on the weekend, you actually had the challenge system. I've already given my opinion. So what did you think of it? Which one did you prefer?
Yeah, it's the second year that we've had ABS. I do not care for the full ABS.
Yeah, me
whatsoever. The numbers will show that the reason that they wanted to add it, I think, was to help balls put in play, but walks and strikeouts both go up when it's full ABS. Full ABS really hurts veteran pitchers too. Guys that have to move the ball all around, have to rely on the edges, and umpire might want to call it a strike, but it's not up to him, anymore. And those are also pitches that the counter argument might be, say, well, someone could challenge it. But a lot of the time, if it's close and like that, and you have to consider when there is a challenge game, there's strategy implemented behind it too, because you only get 3. I love that. I like the challenge system. I think it's a happy medium. And like I said, it adds a strategy element back into the game that you can keep an eye on. Now, for the average fan, I don't know how much they value that. I love it, though, especially once that we got rid of pitchers hitting. For me as a broadcaster and what I do, things to pay attention into the game. And if when you use your challenges, how you use your challenges. I'll give you a prime example. A game in May in Round Rock, Oklahoma City was up by 1. So they're the visiting team, top of the 9th. And it was, I want to say, like a leadoff hitter, and like a 3-ball count, or maybe it was like even 2-1, or no, I don't even think it was a 3-ball. I think it was like a 1-0 pitch that Round Rock used a challenge on. They were wrong, and so now they're out of challenges. You go to the bottom of the 9th, leadoff hitter, batting, 1-run game, 3-2 pitch, gets called for strike 3. Now, eventually, we were able to see that ABS said it would have been a ball, but they didn't have a challenge, and that completely changes things right there. You go from bases empty, 1 out, because they couldn't challenge, to having a leadoff man on in a 1-run game. So stuff like that I love. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a good balance because, as I've said, being a home plate umpire now is the hardest it's ever been. And it's probably not going to get any easier because guys throw harder than they have. They throw pitches with more movement than they ever have before. And it's a tough job for sure. So, we've seen a couple of iterations now, the full ABS. Last year it was wider. They actually gave an inch off each side of the plate. And all the ball has to do is just touch any part of that imaginary box. This year they shrunk it to just match up with the corners of the plate. And I just feel that it's not serving the purpose that baseball wants it to. And again, if we want to talk about the art of pitching, like I said before, you lose that with ABS. So I'm all for the challenge system. Even being in the big leagues, I'm done with full ABS, and I think a lot of players and coaches would agree with me.
Yeah, and
here's the other thing. In theory, it's supposed to be consistent, ballpark to ballpark. It's not.
Yeah,
it's just not. And that, exactly. I think part of that is the unique nature of baseball, where every stadium is different. So Major League Baseball would disagree with me, but talking with those who their jobs rely on it, it's not consistent either.
And I think people assume that the challenges come from the bench, and they don't. They have to come either from the catcher, the hitter, or the pitcher, and it has to be literally immediate. So, I mean, it's like it's part of the game. It's not like it's, okay, let's wait a second. Yeah, hey, let's challenge. So, I mean, literally from the time either a hitter or a catcher or a pitcher challenges, then it goes up on the board. You get to see the ball coming in. That's like a hell of a lot of fun for me to watch. It's like dramatic. And then it's either a ball or strike. You either win or you lose. And like the entire process is anywhere from 15 to 18 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only times there might be slight delays is if there's maybe a little technical difficulties getting it on the board. But in that event, still, the umpire's getting the signal from what's called the ABS tech, the person that's hired by Major League Baseball that's on site to help that. So yeah, there really is not much of anything that would add a significant amount of time to the game.
Travis Barbary, what a professional he is. Get to see his process every day. And it's interesting, because he's dealing with the veterans and he's dealing with the process. He's getting to tell people that they're making it to the major leagues, which is super cool. And he's also having to tell people that they're getting cut from the whole program all in all. So he has maybe the hardest job of anybody in the entire system, and the Dodgers could not have a better person in his spot.
100% agree. We're so lucky to have him. He's an organizational lifer. It's crazy. I think this coming year will be his 30th in the organization, and he's only 52. He has not had a full-time employer since he graduated from college other than the Los Angeles Dodgers, whether it's a player or a coach. So, yeah, and like you said, AAA manager is, especially now, it's an incredibly hard job. The amount of times that his hands were tied with things in terms of player usage, or saying, oh, you have to sit this guy today, you can't use this guy because he might be needed in the big leagues, to guys are going up, guys are coming back, but it's kind of an unknown sometimes when a guy is going to be specifically back and things like that. So, and like we mentioned also earlier, the lesser amount of players you're able to have under contract in the minor league system is not helped either. So you can't necessarily get someone brought up from who's hanging out extended spring training or the lower levels of the minors just to fill in if you need a body. So Travis is, you talk to any player, absolutely love playing for him. He is a player's manager, and sometimes I think that label can get misconstrued a little bit. But to me, it's because he puts the player first. And it's funny because, I saw when Dusty Baker got ejected in the ALCS, it was only like the 26th time in his career as a major league manager he's been ejected. Travis tends to get ejected about 7-8 times a year.
It's awesome.
But it's always to back up his player. It's always to back up his player. And when you see him out there yelling on the field, that's the complete opposite of who he is, on an everyday basis. And communication is such a big part of it, especially at AAA when the front office is saying, we want to use this guy in this spot or this, whether it's, hey, we want him to just only bat against, left-handed pitchers or this or that. And like you said, you're managing so many different types of experience levels too, guys who've been in the big leagues for several years, who have been successful at that year, who are trying to get back, to guys who are on the way up for the first time, who have really no idea what to expect at AAA. So he's got a great ability to connect with everybody and learn them. And, it's no result, guys. Guys love playing for him.
There's a lot of behind the scenes that go on to put on just a AAA game. It's unbelievable. I didn't actually have any clue just how much went on in the press box to put on a performance like you guys do. Lisa Johnson and the crew, you guys just have an entirely first-class setup there in Oklahoma City, don't you?
Oh, well, thank you very much. And yeah, we responsible for 4 different positions on a game day basis, for the official score, the data stringer, they'll do the live stats for Major League Baseball Advanced Media, the boss operator, which works in turn with the data stringer, the time clock operator. I mentioned before the ABS tech, we don't schedule or hire that person, but for all intent, they basically are also our employee. Yeah. They're also up in the press box, helping with the ABS system and all that stuff. And they're using our press box, and we work very closely with them too. And then, from cutting video highlights to post on social media it's always a flurry of activity. And we haven't gotten to the other side of the press box yet that oversees everything that goes on in terms of the scoreboard, the PA, the music. Now, that's not our department. That's
right.
A totally different department. But like you said, in the grand scheme of what goes behind on a AAA baseball game, it's a lot. There's a lot of people up there that, have to be, locked in from especially from the production side, from the time the gates open till the game is over for us to, everything from when, it's really a nonstop process all day, but especially from the time lineups get posted till the end of the game, and sometimes after the game, if there was a question about a scoring call or something else that we have to deal with, whether it's fulfilling an interview request. So I like to say it's a lot of work, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay, so the transition from, I believe, there's been a couple of smaller owners, I think, combined with the bigger owners with the AAA Oklahoma City Dodgers. I could be wrong there. I'm not great at the business side of things. But, okay, Mandalay and now Diamond Baseball Holdings. Has there been any difference in that transition of power?
No, not at all. So we came into Diamond Baseball Holdings about 2 years ago now, and they've just continued to grow and grow and grow. No, there's been very little impact from where I sit. I'm sure there is behind this, there is, in the minutia in terms of how a budget is built and maybe moving this line item to this area and stuff like that. But outside of that, there have been very little, oversight or with their, hands in how we operate. So, and if you did not know that fact, I don't think you could tell any difference from how things were in 2021 till now.
So one thing I think you could see the difference, maybe you're a casual fan and you haven't been to an Oklahoma City game, in 4 or 5 years. If you haven't, do it. It's absolutely the best entertainment for the value of the dollar that you can spend, period, in a discussion. You are seeing major league players play every time you go out there. And especially with the Dodgers, you're probably seeing potential all-star major league players from right close up. But the stadium has changed. It was built, I believe, in 1997, opened in 1998. You guys have added some luxury suites. I know you've redone your press box. You've added areas that organizations, right, the third baseline, the first baseline can rent. You can have your own space right there, 50 feet from home plate. So first of all, the promotions, I know you guys have wonderful promotions. Everybody has the Friday night, but you guys with Oklahoma City, seems like you win every year, the promotional minor league club of the year, whatever that award is. And then you've changed the stadium to make it to where, there's a lot of cool things that you could do. So talk about the promotions and everything that anybody could do to have a good time at AAA Oklahoma City at Bricktown Ballpark.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think overall we probably are, among all the 120 minor league teams, we'd be kind of towards the lower end in terms of the amount of promotions we do. We don't have a ton of giveaways or anything like that, but we do have a lot of weekly promotions, the $2 Tuesdays, the Friday fireworks nights. We've started incorporating more Bark at the Park dates, which have been very popular. We do a lot of stuff that's kind of community driven in terms of some of the special jerseys we wear, Pack the Park Pink, the military nights, things like that. And we tend to announce those, around January, February. So for those fans, make sure you keep an eye out for that. In terms of how the stadium and it's evolved itself, and I think it's just part of a bigger trend within sports business in general. If you were to build a new stadium today, it would not look like the one we have. It's
Yeah.
not going to be the one that was built in 1998. It's not going to be a 14,000 seat stadium. That's just the reality of the situation. It would probably top out at about 9,000 seats, which is what our capacity is right
Tulsa.
now. Yeah. It's just a combination of a lot of things. And I think mostly that we just have more entertainment options, as a society as whole now than we did in the late 90s when Chickasaw Bricktown Ballpark was built. And especially in Oklahoma City, the way that the city has grown and changed and all that. It was the first big, project through maps that helped kind of redefine Oklahoma City and its story. There's been changes to the ballpark that really emphasizes on the group and hospitality spaces. But like I said, that's no different than basically any other ballpark. From the major leagues to the minor leagues, that there is more interest in those kind of communal areas that people can have as outings, that they can socialize instead of just sitting there and watching the game. There's nothing wrong with that, of course, and there's plenty of people who still love to do that, and we love them. But that's just a big trend, sports business wise overall, is to accommodate those group and hospitality spaces, and our ballpark is no different.
Yep. So if somebody wanted to order season tickets or acquire, as far as, what promotions will be available, all that, who do they need to contact? Where do they need to go? The website and all that. Yeah,
okcdodgers.com. Of course, that's available 24/7. You can give us a call, regular business hours, 405-218-21-1000, 218-1000. If you want to speak to someone and make sure we get you in the proper person. Yeah, both season tickets as well as group outings are available already now for 2024. Full schedule available on our website as well for 2024. Single game tickets, though, won't go on sale till as we get closer to opening day. But there's always different package promotions we have that can tailor to you and your families or your individual self. So like I said, go on our website or give us a call. We'd be happy to have you come out to a game.
Alex Freedman, you're one of the busiest people that I think I have ever met in my entire life, and I have taken up a tremendous amount of your time as we've recorded this on a Sunday morning. So I thank you so much for joining and spending so much time on Dodgers Daily.
Oh, well, no, thank you for having me, and certainly appreciate all the work you do, covering the Dodgers minor leagues, and I know a lot of people appreciate it.